how to prepare for a Bitcoin hard fork. Now, I said in the opening that I'm covering this due to popular demand. And that demand came from a number of YouTube comments specifically asking me to talk about this. I then also saw people like Andreas Antonopoulos and others repeatedly sending out tweets to reassure people that if there is a Bitcoin hard fork, you'll end up with an equal balance on both chains. So that's the first thing to say. Just like when Ethereum split, if you had a balance of, say, 100 coins in your wallet before the fork, you'd have 100 coins in your wallet after the fork, plus another 100 coins on a new duplicate of that coin. And now in the case of Ethereum, that means that you ended up with 100 Ethereum core tokens and 100 Ethereum classic tokens. And on day one, they both had equal value. But as you'll see from CoinMarketCap, they gradually went their own separate ways, and the market decided to buy and sell the different coins, and now the prices are very, very different indeed. And this is similar to what we can expect if Bitcoin splits. So let's get into this. It says here that Bitcoin is at a crossroads. The two major scaling proposals, SegWit, which is short for Segregated Witness, and Bitcoin Unlimited, BU for short, are currently vying for Bitcoin users' hearts and minds. At the same time, many are wondering what will happen to their holdings in the case of a Bitcoin hard fork. Now, the image that Bitcoinist.com has used here to illustrate this is quite appropriate in my opinion. And for those of you that are actually listening to this podcast rather than watching it on YouTube, they've used this image of a road sign. It's got a yellow background and it has a black line to represent the road. And the road starts at the bottom and it moves up to the center. Then it goes off in two different directions diagonally to create a Y shape. Now on the road, this would be a warning that the road doesn't actually go straight on ahead. So you can't continue to drive straight on ahead. When the road splits, you have to make your mind up which way you're going to turn off before you get there. So the line going from the bottom of the sign to the middle, that would be representing the chain of transactions on the Bitcoin network that everyone is currently operating on, right? All miners are working on the same Bitcoin right now. Elsewhere, there are other miners that are working together on completely different chains, such as Dash, Litecoin, and so on. They're all separate, they're all using different rules, and everyone gets on just fine. But if a portion of the miners in Bitcoin decide to begin mining transactions that are using a sufficiently different set of rules to the rest, then they will effectively be taking an exit off the highway and going their own way. And if that software that they start to run is significantly different from the Bitcoin that they were previously working on, it's almost bordering on becoming a different coin. In the same way that like Dash and Litecoin and Bitcoin are all separate, well, when does a modification to Bitcoin become a different coin altogether? That's kind of one of the questions. And at that point, there will be two Bitcoins, almost as if it had been cloned. And when that point comes, we have this like a split where everyone will have an identical wallet balance on both versions of Bitcoin, on one and also the clone. So you don't actually have to do anything before the fork, but you may decide to do something or take certain actions after the fork. Now, if Bitcoin does split in this way, and we end up with two Bitcoins, we actually now have the original Bitcoin that we were previously using, which will continue, but we'd also have this brand new cryptocurrency that is like the clone of Bitcoin with some modifications. Now, you could at that point change the name of the clone, and the average person wouldn't actually be any the wiser. It might actually be clearer than having one coin called, say, Bitcoin Core and a completely different currency called Bitcoin Unlimited, because that would just confuse the average user who can't really tell the difference. But of course, that's not going to happen because both sides want to keep the brand name Bitcoin for the sake of recognition, which is kind of a paradox because the two coins will seem so similar to the average user that it'll be hard to tell the difference, just purely because they will work and function almost identically to each other from the user's point of view, and the differences are only technical and under the hood. Now, as long as there are miners maintaining both versions, they will continue to both exist, just like the two versions of Ethereum. like miners on either side, they could choose to give up on that side and move their mining power over to the other, just like when a miner decides to say, well, I don't want to mine Bitcoin anymore and I want to move over and mine a different currency. It's the same kind of decision, right? So say if a miner can't afford to continue mining one of the versions of Bitcoin, they would be forced to switch over to the other one or to go out of business. And they're unlikely to allow themselves to go out of business, so that's where the resolution of the situation should happen, and one of the two chains or one of the two versions of Bitcoin should die. Now, the reason it may become unprofitable to continue mining one of the versions is if the price of that particular version drops significantly. And this is where you come in. Given that you have 100 of each coin, according to my earlier example, you can choose to sell one type of Bitcoin and keep the other. And if enough people do that, if they sell enough of the same version of the coin, the price drops, and then mining it becomes less and less profitable. I'm actually personally surprised that Ethereum Classic is still going. I'm not actually sure how the miners are managing to continue to make a profit mining a coin that's worth $1.66 when they could be mining the alternative, which is Ethereum Core, which has a value of $29.40 a coin. Now, of course, that could have something to do with the amount of mining competition, but let's not get into that here because it's not really relevant to this discussion. So let's move further down because this other bit gave me something to say. It says here that this whole situation is due to the major philosophical split in the Bitcoin community related to the notion of what Bitcoin is and what it should be. So this is what it really boils down to. It's two or more differing sets of beliefs about what Bitcoin is and, more importantly, what it should evolve into. And as you'll hear from Josh Shigala say in an interview that I did with him, which I'm going to publish tomorrow, it's almost become like two religions at war. And I think that's a fair statement because this subject really matters to people because the outcome significantly impacts the world at large. Now, I'd like to actually invite everyone to share with me which one of these two philosophies that you personally believe in. So I'm going to outline them and then just post your own views in the comments. Don't go attacking people who have already commented because I'll just ban you from commenting on the channel in future and you won't even know it's happened. So if I ban you, you'll seem to be able to post comments, but you will be the only person that will see them when you're logged into your account. To everyone else, including myself, they'll be hidden. So if you get banned and you continue to post comments, you'll be forever talking to the wall, so don't bother. Now with that said, here are the two basic philosophies. In the red corner, we have Bitcoin Core, who believe that Bitcoin is akin to digital gold. They believe that Bitcoin's most important properties are things like security, the irreversibility of transactions, that Bitcoin is independent from any political views, and they believe that these things are primary and things like transaction speed and transaction fees are secondary. In the blue corner, we have Bitcoin Unlimited, that believes that Bitcoin should act like an everyday digital currency. And this would be the old, can I buy my daily cup of coffee in the coffee shop type of test. And that, of course, requires very fast transactions with very low fees, which, of course, reveals the primary values on the Bitcoin Unlimited side of the argument. So let me know in the comments below, if somehow every individual Bitcoin user were able to cast a single vote on which one of these they believe Bitcoin should be, which one would you vote for? I very much look forward to reading your comments. Keep it civil. You have been warned.